Hello there. Welcome back to my channel, Snips by Kelly. I'm Kelly, and I'm so excited that you're here tonight for a single travel layout. But if you stay tuned to the end, I also have companion page ideas. We are using our Let's Go Anywhere collection, and we're using the paper pack and sticker sheet. Great travel icons, great color scheme, lots of title opportunities, tabs, luggage tags, globes, arrows, words and sentiments that go with travel and outdoors. And then we have some great scalloped stickers here on the bottom that are going to be really useful. So the pattern paper, we have periwinkle stripe, we have a sage map, we have mink airplanes with some really cute stitched airplane lines. We have a little bit of a multicolored graph paper in there. And then our busy hero paper is a travel theme with all kinds of travel icons, as well as the passport, more linear pattern there. And then we have some great zip strips. We have craft locator icons. We have colorful locator icons. And then we have a mink world on that last zip there. I love everything about it. It's been so popular. It's actually the April collection, but it is flying off the shelves. Here we have Melissa Miner, who has a YouTube channel called Cards by Melissa, and she's featured on this page. We also show some new trends and texture techniques with tearing, and that's what I'm going to reduplicate tonight. And then we're using the Let's Go Everywhere scrapbooking stamp and thin cut set with globes, passports, suitcases, arrows. We're doing some stamping with those arrows and some great sentiments on that. We're going to have so much fun with that. And we're going to incorporate trends and techniques for texture. I'm going to use a photo from an annual girl trip where we went on a lobster catch. We actually walked off the lobster boat with our lobsters in hand, walked down the sidewalk, and took them into a cafe where they cooked it for us. So I have a lot of wasted space at the bottom of this photo, so I think it will be perfect to add the travel title on the bottom, and it's going to work great. We have some options, so we can take this tearing technique off across to another page, but I'm actually going to show you some different ideas for a companion page later on. I love the random tearing technique. So here's a layout that I completed with our Good Life collection with lots of layering underneath, peeking through some tearing and distressing. I love this technique. It worked perfectly for Good Life, which was rustic, and country, which is right up my alley because I do live on a ranch. And my idea for that second page would be maybe to carry over the texture tearing technique to the opposite page, but do some random tearing on that second page. We're going to talk more about that if you want to stay tuned to the last half of the video. So actually, we're going to have some layering underneath. So I was kind of trying to think about the very best way to do this. So I thought that we would use a scarlet cardstock here that is actually 10 3/4 by 12. If you want to do the companion page, you're going to double it. And then we're going to leave a little extra space at the bottom, maybe about 3/4 of an inch at the bottom and only a 1/2 of an inch at the top, because we're going to be doing some stamping with some sage ink, and we're going to stamp the arrow from the Let's Go Anywhere scrapbooking stamp and thin cut set. So I'm just doing a little stamping off of that arrow in the sage ink, and I actually am using the scarlet paper as my guide. It's a small enough stamp that I'm not nervous about stamping right underneath that cardstock. So I'm putting that cardstock in place, and because the stamp wasn't seasoned, I actually stamped off quite a few times just to get a good, make sure that I was getting a good solid stamp. Of course, the ink gets a little bit darker after it dries, so you could do second generation and you could stamp off and make it lighter. I'm just going to stamp directly underneath that scarlet piece, and I'm going to stamp all the way across. And I'll give you a little hint. I reduplicate the base of this layout for my companion page. There are some changes on some of the top layers, but the bottom layers, it's so easy to just reduplicate the base and change up the photos and change up a few of the little techniques for the companion page. I love adding companion pages to featured artwork in our catalog. The featured artwork is usually amazing because it's featured, of course, and they want to showcase the line, but it's also a jumping off point that really, really helps. Now let's take a look at some of the bits here. So I have a 3/4, or excuse me, a 1/2 by 12-inch graph paper, colorful graph paper for the top, and I'm going to do a 1/4 by 12 for the bottom. This mink airplane piece is going to be, let's see, 9 by 12, and then we're going to have some pieces that we're going to tear and that we're going to cover up. So that busy travel piece is 4 1/8 by approximately 8. Some of it won't show, so you could get by with a little bit of a shorter piece. Again, this gray piece is 9 by 12. Let me double check that. Yes, it is 9 by 12. And then we know that we're going to have that piece peeking through. And it's like, how did they do that? So they tore away the mink airplane pattern piece, and what was peeking out underneath was a little bit of the busy travel and a little bit of that background scarlet. Now we could have just used small strips of scarlet, but then we would have had to have inserted more. We're also going to use the craft locator zip strip that is 1/2 by 12 on the bottom, and we're just going to create pieces that are flush on the bottom of each other to create interest all the way down. So we're going to have that scarlet base that starts about 1/2 inches from the top, and then we're going to have the 1/2 inch graph paper, and then we're going to have a couple layers here, but the 9 by 12 airplane piece with the 4 1/8 by 8-inch busy travel that we're going to tear. And we're going to tear it kind of on a triangle where we're going to start on the edges and we're going to tear inward. And we're going to make it a little bit of more narrow at the bottom. So we're going to tear it toward us. Remember, tearing toward us makes the white core show up more. Tearing away from us makes it less of a distinct mark. So if you like that white core showing and you even maybe want to do some distressing on that white core, you can tear toward yourself. And do you see how I'm getting a little more narrow toward the bottom? A lot of that little bottom bit won't show because it's going to be covered up, but we're just starting with that to kind of figure out the layers here. Sometimes you look at it and it seems so simple, but then you're kind of thinking to yourself, what did they do? Now I cut with a thin cut, a 2.5 inch circle. So whatever means you have to create a circle, perhaps in the master, it's a little bit bigger of a circle. I went with 2.5 and that seemed to work out really well. I did narrow my scrap there, my busy travel scrap. I narrowed that a little bit so that that 2.5 inch circle would fit on there. And I actually did stamp "Let's Go" in intense black on that circle and did a little background stamping with the airplanes in that stamp set as well. I stamped those airplanes with mink on the background and did a little distressing on that, and we'll talk about that. So now I'm just grossly tracing where the outer edges are going to come. I want a little bit more to show because I want some of the scarlet to peek through. So it's kind of scary, but we're just going to tear it. So we can always tear more. And so when I tear toward myself here, again, some of that is going to show, and it's a little awkward on camera because the camera is between myself and my hands and the paper. So I have to kind of lay it down and do a little bit of tearing, and then I kind of try to pick it up and do a little bit of tearing. But I've drawn grossly on the edges of the busy travel torn piece, and I'm tearing actually a little bit farther because I want the scarlet to show underneath. Then we're going to bend back some of these pieces to create even more texture. It's such a trendy, popular technique right now. There's so much tearing going on, and I know what's old is new again. So there might have been tearing in the past, and then you don't do it for a while, and then it comes back on trend for a while, and then making a little bit of an interesting background instead of just tearing straight strips is kind of fun. So it gives a whole different technique that you can then fill with some travel icons, and it's so fun. So here's my first run, and I'm going to take a peek at what I've got going on here, and I feel like it's in a good spot. Even though not too much of the scarlet is showing through right now, I know that I'm going to be bending back the edges of this mink pattern. I love the stitching in this collection. There's stitching in the stamp sets. There's stitching on some of the sentiments. There's stitching in the pattern papers for the airplane lines. And I love that it kind of creates this central theme that's going all the way through this collection. Like I've said, this collection is actually not the featured collection until next month, till April, but literally pieces of it have already sold out and have had to be reordered. It's been so popular. Everyone needs travel, right? We don't just take a few photos when we travel. We're a little crazy with our cameras, and we end up with so many photos. So often people are looking at the featured artwork and they're recreating that. They're looking at the workshop kit and they're creating those. A lot of people then create my Simply Scrappin' and my Sparkle and Shine, and they combine all of those pages for their travel albums, and it's so much fun. I love recreating featured artwork in the catalog, and I've actually been on a mission on this current catalog cycle to recreate all of the artwork in the idea book. And so you can actually catch quite a few of my process videos that I've already created, and I figured out all of the sizes for you and all of the colors and how they created these. And so you can tune into those. I'll link all of those that I've done so far in the description. So now it looks like they have used more of the pattern papers to create some really cool backgrounds behind a featured photo. And so the sizes of those that I went with is the map paper. Here I went with, let's see, 3.5 by 6.5, and I'm doing some distressing with my scissors. So I'm just going around with my my microtip scissors and causing a little bit of a crackling on the edges by just distressing those a little bit. This blue pinstripe, periwinkle pinstripe, is also 3.5 by 6.25, and so I'm going to distress that as well, and then we'll do a little bit of inking with some toffee ink on these edges, and it will just kind of all tie together: the distressing, the tearing, the texture with the tearing and the distressing, and we'll bend those edges just a teeny tiny bit. You could spritz those edges with water and get a better bend and do a little tearing and bending on those, but I just kind of like doing just a little bit of bending here and distressing that upward just a little bit. And so we're just focusing tonight on texture and trends, and it's just a trendy little layout here. I love it. And I love the travel icons. You can tweak it. Now, my travel was to, like I said, an annual girl trip to Maine, and so it wasn't international travel, and there's passports on this, and it doesn't bother me a bit. Travel is travel, and it's just super, super cute icons. So now I'm taking a little bit of toffee ink with my mini ink blending tool and adding a little bit of inking to the edges of that and just giving it a nice little distressed and finished look. And I think that that will be something that will use quite a bit on some up and coming process videos using this collection, just because it ties in so well. And I've always said if I was stranded on a deserted island and I could only choose one of our ink colors, it would probably be toffee. Not because toffee is my all-time favorite color of our color collections, but because it's the most used. I feel like it is used for just just really light edging, for distressing, for backgrounds. It's used for so many things. It's a color that I hope never ever goes away because I use it so much. All right, so we're getting this distressed here and we're going to create a great background. Now, it's a single photo and it is a 4x6 photo. And so I'm going to have a 4 1/4 by 6 1/4 pine cardstock in the back of that as a photo mat. Now, I've already said that I stamped in intense black "Let's Go" on the background and then of the circle, the 2.5-inch circle. And then I also stamped a few mink airplanes in the background that are also on the Let's Go Anywhere scrapbooking Stampin' Thin Cut set, and then distressed all the way around the circle since I already had the toffee out. And now I'm just kind of finding placement. I want that circle to be in there and then to put some travel icons around it and just kind of see where it's going to fit. And you can move yours farther in if you want to cover up a little bit more of that texture coming across the page, or you can leave it closer to the left. I wanted mine a little closer to the left because I love that trendy look. That's why we're doing this. I love all that tiering that's coming out, and it's really cool how all the travel icons in the hero paper are floating in the air, and you see the sunglasses and the suitcases and the water bottles and the flip-flops or shoes and the globes and the passports just floating out like they're spread out all over. And then you can add some of the little icons in there as well. So I did do some stamping here. So I have 3 different sentiments that one is stamped on shortbread, one is stamped on light toffee, and one is stamped on true toffee. And the sentiments that are right there in the Stampin' Thin Cut set. And then in between those stamped icons, we're also going to have some stickers in there as well. So I have a couple little scraps here, and they're about 3 inches each, and one of them is about 3/4 by 3, and another one of those is just a little slightly smaller, and it's the same passport pattern. One of them is torn on top to just create a little texture underneath, and the other one is trimmed. Those passports are trimmed out perfectly, and so they're just going to be added up there for some texture. Now, I stamped a globe on the periwinkle paper in intense black, and then I stamped another one in white because I wasn't quite exactly sure what I was going to use here. I kind of liked just keeping it simple and adding that periwinkle globe, and it ties in with the periwinkle striped paper. But I believe what they did in the original is they colored it with some of our Colorista colored pencils. So I'm kind of trying to decide, which way I'm going to go there. And then I actually move my photo over just a teeny bit, so a little bit more of that globe will show on the right. So you can barely see this here, but I think that they colored with the Colorista pencils, and we have 3 types. We have bright and vivid, perfect portrait, and there's one more, landscape. And I believe that I'm guessing, but it looks to me like they maybe used the aqua blue and the azure blue for the bodies of water, and it looks like platinum yellow that they used for some yellow tones in there, and a little bit later the vanilla tint. And the vanilla tint is a little bit more of a brown. Now, you don't need to spend a lot of time on this because most of the globe is completely covered up. So whatever method of coloring you use, if you use tri-blend markers or if you have some older colored pencils, it's just a tiny little bit in the left-hand side. So I do more coloring than actually needs to be done, but I'm coloring the bodies of water with the lighter blue, coming back in a couple little spots with the darker blue, and then coloring in some of those areas with the platinum yellow. And literally, barely shows. And then for a little bit of the globe, like the bar on the globe, I'm going to use a little bit of the vanilla tint. And honestly, about maybe 3/4 of the top of the globe shows and even less than that on the bottom. And so you don't have to waste a lot of time. But I'll say those colors again, just in case you want to do it exactly. I have azure and aqua blue. I have platinum yellow, and I'm using vanilla tint. So just, it's not even really, there's no color technique, even though our Colorista colored pencils do really nice blending. This is not really any technique here because it's just a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit of coloring there. And so I loved this lobster catch. So we went on a boat called the Luckiest Catch, or Lucky Catch, and we went out on the boat and learned all about lobster seasons and catching lobsters, kind of the rules, what Maine is known for, how they lay their eggs, what they're looking for, and then we helped, do the work. And so we actually had to get dressed up in these like rubber aprons, and we had our rubber boots, and we were able to pull the nets and the cages up, and then we were able to pick out our own lobster, and then they wrapped the lobster, the pinchers, I can't remember if they're called pinchers, claws, pinchers, with rubber bands. And literally, as we exited the boat, they just handed us our lobster, and we picked our lobsters based on numbers. So all of the visitors on the boat had numbers, and like number 1 got to first pick, number 2, and so on and so forth. So we picked our lobsters, and we literally walked down the street with the lobsters in hand, and we thought that was so funny. Of course, South Dakota doesn't have an ocean, and so we walked down the street, went into this, I don't know that it would be called a cafe. I'm not sure what they call it in Maine. We call them cafes in South Dakota, but we walked into a cafe. They weighed our lobster. We paid by the pound to just have it cooked, not for our lobster. And then they put corn on the cob and other side dishes with it, and our drawn butter and all of that. So I did decide to go with the white globe after I did the coloring. We have created a passport on scarlet paper and a passport on sapphire paper cardstock, and then another passport on pine cardstock stamped in intense black. Those are all from the Let's Go Anywhere scrapbooking Stampin' Thin Cut. And so now it's all about decorating a little bit. I did not actually dirty up that globe with toffee, but I wish I had. So if you're following along here, you can totally do that. Now in the example, or the featured art that is my inspiration today, they had a white suitcase, and they colored that white suitcase with the Colorista pencils, and I actually preferred just having a colored suitcase in there. I wasn't sure if I wanted to use scarlet or toffee. I do end up going with toffee. I feel like it stands out because there's already a scarlet suitcase in the pattern paper in the background. So I have the pine passport, the toffee suitcase, and we'll be adding a few little stickers in there, and we'll be adding a few die cuts. So I'm also going to use a little bit of the craft die cut from the sticker sheet, and I'm just going to trim it off on the bottom. It does end up being close to 6 1/4 inches because it's a 6 1/4 inch photo, but some of it will be covered up, so you could probably get by with 6 inches, which would leave you an even 6 inches to use for something else, which I love to do. So this collection also has some black and craft die cuts as the embellishments for the kit that have some additional sentiments on them. It has airplanes, it has X's, it has a lot of cute little icons, and we'll be adding those to this page as well. It's so wonderful. I love this collection. And so is everyone else loving the collection. I have some more process videos coming out with this collection. I have my own workshops coming out with this collection, a simple scrappin' and a sparkle and shine. Now in the master, they used the top of this tag, and instead of wasting the bottom, I actually thought, how easy would it be to make another tag top and then use the bottom of that tag on another layout. I'm always doing that if only bits and pieces are showing. And I love how they're getting some color balance here. So we have a little bit of scarlet on the top with the tag. We have a little bit of scarlet on the bottom with the passport. And then is a scarlet peeking through on the right-hand side of the page behind our trendy, distressed, tearing pieces over there, or torn pieces over there. And so we're going to add some color balance with sapphire, some color balance with sage. We've got all the colors in the collection in there, balancing it all with the craft. So, so cute. So now I'm adding a little bit of a tab sticker, multi-dot tab sticker. We have a sticker that has the green locator on it and an away we go craft sticker. And it's just creating this really fun cluster of layers, and it's following through with those travel icons. And then I do notice after I'm off camera, my passport is upside down up on the top. Oh, Lucy, Lucy. So the sapphire passport, and your final answer, if you're going to follow along and recreate with me, turn it right side up, but it would be typical of me to be a little bit backwards and upside down. So I'm popping up the Travel With Me sticker on foam tape. And then I'm adding a small piece, and I think it's about 3 inches, about 1/2 by 3, the locator zip strip on the bottom that just kind of adds another foundation for some die cuts and other stickers so that it's not just flat on the mink background. So we do have a Follow Your Heart sticker that I'm going to add over off to the right of the journaling. And yeah, we feasted. Oh my word. They gave us our little lobster bibs and we sat outside in the wonderful air. It was like a crisp fall day and we ate the lobsters that we caught that day. And it was just fun to eat what we caught, and we learned a lot that day. Really, really fun. So we have some extra stickers here, and it looks like to me on the green arrow sticker, they took a black die cut arrow and mounted that over the top. Now, there's also an arrow stamp, the one that we stamped with the sage arrows across the bottom. So you could stamp on that. That would be a really cool technique, to stamp in black ink on top of the green arrow. That would be great. And so now I'm just going through. We have the little Wonder die cut, Journey die cut. We have some pluses or crisscrosses, and we have a little swirly arrow that we're going to add to this page. And I'm really staying true to the design because I love it. There isn't usually the featured art in the idea book is what sells me on a collection. And I love that the featured art isn't duplicated in our scrapbooking workshops. So if you plan to do our scrapbooking workshop for this collection, this is a completely separate piece of artwork and a separate page that you can get more out of. And I love that it just uses our pattern papers and stickers from our sticker sheet, and then you can add a lot more icons with our scrapbooking Stampin' Thin Cut. So lovely. I am in love. I'm loving it. Now let's just ponder on it a minute. I'll let you take a screenshot if you want to, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we can do for a companion page. So I gave you a little heads up that for the companion page, we have the exact same pieces on the base. So we have all of the exact same pieces. The only thing that I did differently is I poked my scissors into a couple different spots and tore those apart, and then I added some little bits of additional pattern paper underneath so that they would randomly show through, and then I could add different photos on top. So let's go over the underneath the torn bits. We have 1.5 by 3.5 busy travel and a 1 by 2.5 busy travel torn underneath to repeat some of the technique from the left page over to the right. We have a 4 by 4 3/4 map green, a 2 by 2.5 blue stripe underneath the photo on the right, again distressed in the same way on the right as it was on the left, adding more of those passports, adding more suitcases, is adding some more stickers from the sticker sheet, as well as some of those black and craft die cuts. So I added more photos. You'll get to see it here in just a minute. I added 4 3x4 photos with 3 1/4 by 4 1/4 pine backgrounds. I added 3x3 photo, 3 1/4 by 3 1/4, and I did pop that up, and the rest was just decorating with extra icons to create a quick and easy companion page for the focal page. All you want to do is to carry over some of the technique from the left over to the right with that same background. It was so much fun. I hope you enjoyed this. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and the notifications bell so that you can catch all of the future process videos with this line. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again here right on Snips by Kelly.